Have you ever noticed that the more you ask, the less it seems to happen? It's weird, right? We grow up believing that insisting means faith, that repeating shows commitment. But what if it's actually the opposite? What if this habit of asking every day, all the time, is what's slowing everything down? Sounds crazy, but according to Neville Goddard, the problem isn't what you're asking for. It's how you feel when you ask. Here's the hard truth. Every time you repeat the same request, you're reaffirming to the universe and to yourself that you still don't have it. And the universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to states. The vibration behind the request is what shapes reality. And often what's being sent out isn't faith, it's disguised lack. You think you're acting with faith, but you might just be reinforcing the absence. That's the hidden trap behind asking too much. In this video, you'll understand why that sabotages your manifestation, and more importantly, how to break free from that cycle now. The answer isn't asking louder, it's living as if you already have it. And what you're about to discover here might be the key that unlocks it all. It's funny how so many people believe that the more you ask, the faster the universe will respond. But what actually happens is the opposite. Repeating the same request over and over sends a very clear and subtle signal that you still don't believe it's yours. It's like knocking on the same door non-stop, day after day, not realizing it's already unlocked. That creates a cycle of lack. The more you ask, the more you confirm you don't have it. And that not having feeling is exactly what your manifestation picks up and mirrors back. A lot of people who study the law of assumption and repeat affirmations like "I am prosperous" end up, without realizing it, falling back into the habit of asking again the next day. The problem isn't the words, it's the emotional frequency behind them. When a request comes wrapped in desperation or urgency, it carries the weight of lack, not certainty. And that's where the danger of asking repeatedly comes in. It reinforces what's missing, not what's already true. Asking again reveals that the state of having hasn't been fully assumed yet. I've seen people ask the universe for a new job every single day, yet deep down they still feel fear, doubt, and scarcity. And until that inner state shifts, nothing changes on the outside. Because imagination creates reality, but only when it comes with certainty. So before you ask one more time, it's worth pausing and asking yourself, what is this repetition revealing about my inner state? That question opens the door to something even more important. With every new request, no matter how innocent it may seem, there's an unspoken message being sent out. It's still not mine. Deep down, the act of asking carries a subtle confession of lack. Even when you speak with faith and good intentions, saying things like, "I ask for a healthy relationship," or "I ask for financial abundance," what's really being said underneath is, "I don't have this yet." And that feeling of not having is exactly what gets manifested, because feeling is the secret. It's like staring at an empty fridge and saying, "I want food every day," without ever feeling the abundance that's already yours. Your mind stays stuck in lack, even if your words are wrapped in hope. This ask and doubt cycle becomes a silent pattern that blocks your manifestation without you realizing it. Neville Goddard used to say that stopping the act of asking is one of the greatest acts of faith, because those who have don't ask. Those who already see themselves with it just live. That's why so many people pray, repeat mantras, do affirmations, and still feel empty, because the inner state hasn't aligned yet. The universe doesn't respond to what you say with your lips. It responds to what you vibrate with your heart. Manifestation without prayer happens when the asking is replaced with conviction, and that might be one of the most counterintuitive, but most transformative, shifts you can ever make. Because once you realize this, you begin to understand the real power of assuming instead of asking. There's a fine and powerful line between asking and assuming. Asking means looking at something that still feels distant. It's like telling the universe, "Please give me this." But assuming is a whole different inner stance. It doesn't beg, it recognizes, "This is already mine." Neville Goddard pushed hard on this. Live in the end. Act as if you already have it. Speak as if you've already received, because assuming the desired state completely shifts your vibration. Asking is like trying to convince something out there. But assuming? That's when you finally convince yourself, and that's the key. Someone who assumes already moves differently, thinks differently, even breathes differently. For example, someone who wants to attract a loving partner. If they're asking every day, their eyes still carry that waiting energy, that neediness. But if they assume they're already loved, they treat themselves better, walk with more presence, and interact with life like someone who has love. not someone chasing it. The law of assumption works exactly at this level. It's the inner state that manifests, not just the spoken desire. When you feel like you already have it, everything starts to shift because you've stopped begging and started embodying. And even though that may seem like a small move, it completely breaks the loop of empty asking. That's where imagination creates reality. But before you live it fully, there's something else you need to see. Why repeating empty requests doesn't actually work. The universe doesn't operate on quantity. It's not like a customer service rep who only responds if you keep insisting. Quite the opposite. Empty repetition, without emotion, without inner state, is like shouting in an empty room. It makes noise, but nothing moves. A lot of people think repeating an affirmation 21 times is what makes it work. But if each repetition is soaked in doubt, what gets manifested is more doubt, not the desire. Neville Goddard was clear. Imagination creates reality, but only when the feeling matches the scene. Repeating, "I am prosperous," without actually seeing yourself as prosperous, without feeling that reality, is like saying, "It's sunny," while it's clearly raining. There's no alignment between what you're saying and what you're vibrating. The universe doesn't listen to words. It reads states, and states are silent, deep, and loaded with emotion. That's why you can repeat the same prayer for years and nothing changes. Because the root of your prayer isn't "I believe," it's "I'm still waiting." And waiting, in this context, keeps the desire trapped in the future. Have you noticed that? When you stop just speaking the words and start feeling that it's already real, something shifts. The energy around you begins to change. But as long as there's insistence without assumption, the universe just doesn't respond. And that lack of response ends up triggering something even more dangerous. Every time someone repeats a request, a crack opens up inside, a tiny gap that, over time, becomes a portal for fear and doubt. Because repetition, when it's not anchored in certainty, feeds the thought, "Did it work this time?" And that "did it" thought is sneaky. It seems harmless, but it quietly plants the seed of, "I don't deserve this, this is too hard, it never works for me." And that's what the subconscious picks up. Not the phrase, but the emotion hidden underneath. It's like planting a seed and digging it up every day to check if it sprouted. That constant digging doesn't nourish the seed, it kills the root. The same goes for manifestation. When you ask and then immediately wonder, "Did it work?" you're entering a subtle sabotage loop. Even worse, that pattern doesn't just show up in manifestation. It spills over into your relationships, your finances, even your health. The mind learns to mistrust everything, and the universe simply mirrors it back. I've seen people pray with faith in the morning, and by nightfall, they're diving into how to manifest faster videos. Not because they're eager to learn, but because deep down they don't believe they've been heard. And you know what? That's normal, and there's nothing wrong with recognizing it. The mistake isn't in doubting, but in refusing to interrupt the cycle. Because once the cycle becomes habit, it starts masking the real issue. And at that point, the only real way out begins with a totally different decision. The key to breaking this cycle is to stop. Literally, stop. Not stop dreaming or wanting, but stop repeating like someone begging and start living like someone who already has. This shift takes an internal turn. Say a conscious choice to exit waiting mode and step into ownership mode. Instead of repeating, "I want financial peace," you begin to feel, "I am stable, I am provided for." And that changes everything, because it's no longer about words, it's about vibrational state. Anyone who truly understands the law of assumption knows the universe doesn't give you what you ask for, it reflects who you are. If you vibrate like someone who's still waiting, you receive more things to wait for. But if you position yourself internally as someone who already lives it, you start aligning with that reality. That's why Neville always insisted on living in the end, living like you've already arrived, not like someone forever on the way. The difference is subtle, but revolutionary. But changing your approach isn't about memorizing a technique. It's about practicing a new way of thinking, feeling, and talking to yourself. It's about trading sentences like, "When will it happen?" for "How amazing it feels to live this now." And this transition takes training, not of the request, but of the presence. Presence in the desired state. From here on out, everything begins to move differently. And there's a simple practice that can speed up this shift in a powerful way. One of the most powerful ways to break the asking pattern is to change the inner dialogue you're having with yourself. Instead of repeating, "I need this," Start saying inside, it's wonderful to live this now. Not as someone lying to themselves, but as someone rehearsing the desired state. A great practice is to imagine mental scenes where you're already living what you want. Neville Goddard called this inner dramatization. You don't describe what you want, you live it in your mind, as if it's already happening. For example, if you want to manifest more money, don't say, I want abundance. Visualize a real moment. You opening your banking app and seeing the number you desire, smiling, feeling grateful. Feel the relief, the safety, the joy. Let that feeling spread inside you. Practicing this consistently and sincerely starts to dissolve the old habit of insecure asking, because now you're not asking, you're living it. And imagination creates reality exactly like this, with emotion. That inner conversation shifts your posture. You stop searching for signs desperately. Stop comparing yourself to others. Stop doubting divine timing. Why? Because your mind is already convinced that it's real. And when the mind believes, the body follows. Your energy shifts, and your external reality inevitably starts to match. This technique is simple, but it requires surrender. Because when you truly surrender to that state, something new begins to be born inside. When someone finally stops repeating and starts assuming, something shifts almost instantly. It's not that the desire manifests overnight, but the heaviness disappears. The anxiety fades. The urgency gives way to calm confidence. It's like stepping out of a dark room and realizing the light was always there. You just had to flip the switch. And in this case, that switch is the assumed state. Once you step into it, the mind stops searching and starts living. That changes your inner atmosphere, and the universe responds. Many people describe this shift as a sudden clarity, a peaceful stillness, a feeling of, this is it, that restlessness that made you jump from technique to technique, prayer to prayer. It's just gone. Everything starts falling into place without force. Subtle signs appear, an unexpected invitation, a new idea, a reconnection that seems random. Manifestation without prayer begins to reveal itself in details, not because you pushed harder, but because you aligned deeper, and that alignment isn't far away or out of reach. It's a state you can access right now, even if you don't have all the answers yet. Just pause, breathe, and ask yourself, how would I feel if it were already real? Then feel that. Allow it. Stay with it. That's the turning point. Because when you choose to live in the end, even when everything around you says the opposite, you activate the most powerful creative force that exists. And it's in this new inner landscape that the first signs begin to emerge that the cycle has finally been broken. The first sign that you've broken the cycle of repetition is peace. Not fake peace, but a real quietness that settles deep in your body. You realize you no longer need to chase, that you're not trying to control everything anymore. And the most surprising part, even if the desire hasn't shown up physically yet, you feel like everything's already okay. It's like something inside says, it's done. That's the difference between someone who asks and someone who assumes. One lives in tension, the other in certainty. Another very common sign is the absence of anxiety. You stop waking up wondering, will it happen today? And start living your day with presence and fully focused on the now. And then the synchronicities show up. Coincidences that aren't really coincidences. Someone brings up exactly what you've been imagining. A video pops up out of nowhere with the exact answer you needed. Life starts talking to you in a new way. And that only happens when your inner state genuinely shifts. Beyond that, you start to feel flow. Things move with more ease. Without force, without struggle. Not because problems disappear, but because they don't shake you like before. Now you're grounded, rooted, centered. You no longer need to repeat, to remind yourself of what you want, because you already feel like you have it. And at that point, the asking becomes unnecessary, and because you finally get it. Manifestation doesn't depend on asking, it depends on living. Effortless manifestation begins when you trade effort for presence. When you stop treating your desires like something you have to chase, and start seeing them as something that simply wants to be expressed through you. Living instead of asking. That's the shift. It's not about changing your words, it's about changing your identity. You go from being someone who wants to someone who is, and that transition is more powerful than any affirmation said 1,000 times. People who live as if they already have it don't struggle with time. They're not constantly checking, did it work yet? They live, they create, they smile, they trust, because they already feel it. This isn't about faking it, It's about assuming it, about stepping fully into that inner state with ease, with faith, with a certainty that doesn't need proof. And the most magical part? The more you live this way, the less you feel the need to control, and the more life starts moving in your favor. No drama, no pressure, no doubt. Living in the end is the ultimate act of trust. It's no longer negotiating with the invisible. It's walking as someone who already received. And when that happens, you no longer need to ask over and over, because manifestation becomes a natural extension of who you are. And when you reach that point, a new question rises. If everything depends on my inner state, then how do I shift my state, even when my reality hasn't changed yet? Now tell me, how long are you going to keep asking, like you're not worthy of already living what you desire? Isn't it time to stop, take a deep breath, and finally assume it? What would change in your life if you started living today as if you already had it? Would peace come before the blessing? Could the miracle be waiting for you to stop waiting? Maybe what you need right now isn't another technique, but a whole new state, a new stance, a quiet enough to the old cycle of doubt, and a bold yes to the power of living in the end. And if this truth resonated with you, deep down you already know it wasn't a coincidence. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay with me on this journey. There's a lot the spiritual world hasn't told you yet, but I'm here to reveal it, because those who learn to assume never need to ask again.